Hello, everyone. Welcome to iMapInvasives, a valuable tool for pesticide applicators. Today, we will be offering a virtual iMap training customized for New York State pesticide applicators. So we'll discuss recording treatments in iMapInvasives as a resource for pesticide applicators, and how iMap will benefit you. Our presenters today are myself, Mitchell O'Neill, End User Support Specialist for iMapInvasives with the New York Natural Heritage Program. And today we also have Madeline Matino. Just to give you an overview of our agenda today, so I'll be starting with an overview of iMapInvasives and the organization that manages iMapInvasives in New York, as well as what can iMap do for you, how to set up your iMap account, some details about data collection and entry, and some more information about our specific pesticide applicator report tool and some other wrap-up messages. So again, we'll be starting with an overview of iMap. So I work for the New York Natural Heritage Program. Our mission is to facilitate conservation of New York's biodiversity by providing comprehensive information and scientific expertise on rare species and natural ecosystems to resource managers and other conservation partners. And we are a partnership between the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and SUNY ESF. And you can learn more about us at our website, www.nynhp.org. And so we're most well known for work with rare species, since our focus is conserving biodiversity. But since invasive species also have such a huge impact on biodiversity and rare species, we also have the Invasive Species Database Program. And it's this program where we manage iMapInvasives. We also work on a couple other projects, including the Watercraft Inspection Steward Program. We run the data collection and management, as well as some spatial prioritization models to help our invasive species managers. iMapInvasives is an invasive species database used by several jurisdictions across North America. In New York State, it's the centralized invasive species database to support PRISMs, which are partnerships for regional invasive species management, state agencies, and other partners working on invasive species issues, including anyone listening to this training today. And so iMap allows you to view species distributions and generate reports. You can sign up for early detection alerts for species and areas you're interested in. If you are a GIS person, you might be interested to know that our data is available as a web map service. And very important, something we'll be talking about today, is that you can track control efforts and results. And all of this, of course, is in addition to being able to report invasive species data to iMapInvasives. And so where is all this data coming from? So you can see on the table on the screen, we have hundreds of thousands of records as of July 2021. We have three main types: presence records, where species are detected; not detected records, where a species was searched for but not found; and treatment records. Early in iMap's history, so from 2010 to around 2016, uploads of existing data sets from partners was the main source of data, gave us a really good base for the database. But since invasive species are constantly moving, expanding their ranges, we really need continual input of data to keep our database up to date. And so now the most important data source is data entered in real time by community scientists and professionals like you, all across the state. So this is super important for keeping an up-to-date view of invasive species distributions across the state. And I will note that anyone can report records to iMapInvasives. You don't have to be an expert, but the records are all reviewed by experts who can then confirm the record if the species identification is correct, or get the record removed if it is incorrect. And on the right-hand part of the slide, we have showed just a small portion of the many, many organizations across New York State that have contributed to our database. So thank you to all of our partners across New York State for contributing to our database. And that was my overview of iMapInvasives. And so next we'll hear from Madeline about what iMap can do for you as a pesticide applicator.
Thank you, Mitch. So why should anyone report treatments to the iMap database? As the centralized database for invasive species, it's important to also track control efforts. iMap documents efforts across the state within the database, and this information can be used by managers to make decisions. You can easily document and track all treatments there in the database where it's easily accessible. You can also measure the success of your treatments over a given time and how the follow-up surveys compare to the initial treatments. Not only can this all be done at the individual or organization level, but the information is also used by regional managers. As a certified pesticide applicator, there are certain requirements that must be met, including keeping track of your treatments. iMap offers various tools to fulfill these requirements so you can focus more on your treatment efforts and success. Complete a treatment, record it in the field or back in the office, and iMap takes it from here. One of the most useful tools for pesticide applicators is the iMpart tool, or the iMapInvasives Pesticide Applicator Report tool. Each year, certified applicators are required to submit reports summarizing their treatments. If you document your treatments in iMap, at the end of the field season, you can request a report from us, and we will send you a full report of your treatments in the format required by the DEC. Then all you have to do is review and submit it. For example, you can record the address of the treatment site in the site address field of the iMap searched area record, and this will be pulled automatically into the iMpart report so that you don't have to compile the addresses yourself.
So as we start to get into more of the details about iMapInvasives, I wanted to talk about how iMap functionality incorporates user roles. So the public version of iMapInvasives, which is for people who use the database without an account, they do not sign in, there's limited functionality. So they can only view confirmed presence records of invasive species. They cannot view any treatment data. When you get an account, you automatically become a basic user. So you would be able to view and create presence and not detected records, and you can view unconfirmed presences, and you can also download confirmed and not detected records. And you can also download any records that you have submitted. And in terms of treatment, you will be able to view treatments, but only the minimum treatment fields, also known as the basic fields. So this includes species, date, location, name, and organization. Basic users are also able to create individual projects. One thing to note, if you are listening to this before November 2021, treatment type is included in the basic treatment fields. So this is something that any user can see. And treatment type is chemical, physical, or biological. If you're listening to this after November 2021, I should note that the treatment type will be moved to treatment details. What this means is that ordinary users will not be able to see treatment type. This will only be visible for users with a certain level of permissions. And so you have general public, which is the not logged in version of iMap. You have basic users, and then the next level is organization members. So I will talk about what organizations in iMapInvasives are in a second, but for now, just know that they are groups of users in iMapInvasives that all belong to the same organization. And so if you're a member of an organization, you can create treatment records, and you can also view treatment details for records created by yourself or by members of that organization. We have many different organizations collecting treatment data in iMapInvasives already. So in the map on the screen, you can see all of the points across New York State, where our partners have been recording some of the invasive species treatment work that they have been conducting. So this includes state agencies, private pesticide applicators, volunteers, and other organization members. And this additional data improves understanding of treatment efforts. So we really appreciate any efforts to record treatment data in iMapInvasives. And this is all applicable for treatments of pretty much any invasive species. Some examples would include Phragmites, Oriental bittersweet, tree of heaven, kudzu, Eurasian water milfoil, and any invasive species tracked in iMapInvasives. And so with all of that in mind, the next step is to create an iMap account. And so I'm going to hand it over to Madeline again to talk about iMap account setup.
So there are two ways to submit data to iMap. There are a couple different ways that you can submit data to iMap. In the field using your smartphone or on the browser typically used on a computer, but this is also accessible on your phone in a mobile browser. If you're using the browser version, make sure you're on a compatible browser like Google Chrome, Firefox, or Safari. Regardless of the method that you choose to upload your data, you will need to start on the online web application to set up your account. To begin setting up your account, go to NYIMapInvasives.org and click the green login button at the top. This will bring you to the login page where you can enter your credentials in if you have an account, or you can sign up below. Use your name, preferred email address, and create a password. For jurisdiction, select New York if you work mostly in New York. However, you can change this later if you need to. To complete your registration, check your email and make sure that if you don't see it, check your spam and junk folders. Once you locate the email, click the link to read the user agreement, scroll down, and accept. You should now be able to navigate back to this page and log in. When you first log in, your screen should look like this. This menu is just a notification that iMapInvasives has been updated, and you can click Do Not Show in future if you do not want to see this message again. Every time you log in, it will bring you to the map with the extent of North America. You should see hexagons filled with orange circles, and these represent areas where invasive species has been reported. The larger the circle, the more records of invasive species. To orient you, we have our main menu in the top left-hand corner and the navigation tools just below that. You can zoom to your location using the Find My Location button here, or you can also search for an address here. Across the top right, we have our action tools where you can create a record, find a record, filter viewable records, and export or report data. Below this, we have our geographic layers menu where you can toggle different types of layers, change your base map, and view the legend. To access your account and other settings, you can go into the main menu. When you click on the menu icon, there will be a little menu that pops up and choose your account from the list. This is what your account page will look like, and you can find all of your account information here. Most importantly to note is that you can find your person ID number here, which you may need to know for certain types of reporting. Below this, you can see any projects or organizations that you are affiliated with. To edit something on this page, like a project or an organization, you can click on the Edit button in the top right.
And to tell you a little bit more about organizations and projects, these are two different ways to group data and group users in iMapInvasives. So I'll start with organizations. If you are doing invasive species surveys or management as a part of your job duties, generally join that organization. And it's important to note for this training that organizations are required to be able to create and access treatment data. Generally, citizen scientists and volunteers do not need organizations. So I encourage you to look for your organization on iMapInvasives. If it is not there, you can email us at iMapInvasives@dec.ny.gov to get your organization added. Another important feature of iMapInvasives is the project feature. So projects are a great way to group data for a unique project, grant, or a type of treatment. For pesticide applicators, it might be useful to summarize treatments and bill clients. For example, you could group all treatments for a particular project or a particular client into one iMapInvasives project. It is also great for people volunteering for an organization. So some organizations set up projects that their volunteers can join because they do not typically join the organization. So to join an organization, again, you start by going to your account page from the main menu, and then you click Edit at the top right. From there, you scroll down to the organization box, and you click Request to Join Organization. And then you can type in your organization's name into that search bar. And once it pops up in the dropdown, you can then select it from the dropdown. And once you've selected it, make sure to click Request to Join. And then at that point, please remember to scroll back up to the top of the account page and press Save on the top right corner. Now this organization will appear on your account and you will be listed as a pending organization until the admin for your organization approves and changes you to a member. For more details on joining an organization, please visit nymapinvasives.org/training. And so there are over 1,000 organizations in New York in iMap right now. So these include agencies like the DEC, as well as other groups like the Hemlock Initiative, various counties and towns, various state universities, and the PRISMs. So I encourage you to first search what organizations we already have in iMapInvasives, and if you don't see your organization and would like it to be added, please email a request to us at imapinvasives@dec.ny.gov. And so that's everything in your account page. One other thing to consider in the main menu that you may find useful is the email alert feature. So this is an important feature set up so that state officials are alerted to new observations, but anyone can take advantage of these alerts to stay informed on species or geographic areas they are interested in. For example, you could set up an alert for confirmed Tree of Heaven records in Schenectady County, and then you would get an email whenever a new record is submitted. And so the way to access these is to go into the main menu, select your email alerts, and then look at the email alert page. And so there's an option to add and edit alerts in the top right corner. And so first there are general alerts you can opt in or out of. And then you can also set up custom alerts for specific species or areas that you are interested in. And here is an example of what one of those email alerts looks like. As you can see at the top, there's a summary of any records that have come in, and then a list of the records that meet the criteria of your email alert. And for those of you who like to limit the amount of emails you're getting, there is a very useful feature where you can sign up for a digest. For example, since I don't want an email every day, I set up an alert that I set up a weekly alert. So each week it bundles up all the records from the past week and sends me an email rather than me getting an email every single day. And another very useful part of these email alerts is that the email comes with links to the record. So I don't have to go into iMap and find the record manually every single time. I can just click on that link and get straight to the record. And just to provide some more framework on how these email alerts come into play, so all new reports go into iMapInvasives as unconfirmed. For regulated or high priority species, email alerts are triggered and sent to state authorities and then verified by experts before they are set to confirmed in iMapInvasives. And at that point, these records can often trigger alerts for general users who have set up email alerts. For other invasive species, species that might not be as regulated or as high priority, those are reviewed by the iMapInvasives team at the New York Natural Heritage Program, as well as the Confirmers Network. And then these records are set to confirmed and again can generate email alerts to general users who have signed up for them. And so now that you know how to set up an iMap account and join your organization, you should be ready to collect treatment data. And so I'm going to switch it over to Madeline again to talk about our data collection and entry tools.
There are several different platforms that you can use to submit iMap data. The iMap mobile app is a simple application that lets you record presence and not detected records as points only, and it does not require connection to create records. It's important to note that you cannot record treatments on this platform. iMap Online is accessed via a browser, and you can submit all types of data as long as you have connection or service. Survey123 is an application that you can download on your smartphone, and you can record all types of treatments right on your device and in the field. You will not need connection to create records on this platform, only to set it up the app and upload records. The last platform is IMMA, which stands for iMap Mobile Advanced, and it's accessed through Collector, but it's a complex form of reporting that's mainly for those with advanced GIS skills. Today, we will be focusing on how to submit treatments using iMap Online and Survey123. If you would like to learn more about the mobile app and our other platforms, we offer resources and training at NYIMapInvasives.org/training. A quick note on Survey123 and Collector. These are apps that are created and run by Esri, an organization that provides tools and guidance to those using GIS or geographic information systems. Both of these platforms can submit data to the iMapInvasives database, and if you want to learn more about them, you can visit esri.com. Here's a full table showing all of our data collection tools and their capabilities. Again, we will mostly be focusing on iMap Online and Survey123, and you can find this table at nymapinvasives.org/report-an-invasive. I will, however, do a brief run-through of recording invasive species on the mobile app. There is a full mobile app training on our training website, but here is a quick run-through in case you see an invasive species out in the field and you want to report it. Download the app from the App Store and type in your iMap account credentials on the Preferences page and click Retrieve iMap List to log in. Click Save and you'll go back to the main screen, and here you can click Add Observation and you'll be brought to the Record Observation page. Make sure you take or upload a good photo, choose the species, select Detected or Not Detected, type in any optional details, and upload them back on your main screen. This is the simplest way to report invasive species on the fly, and we encourage you to do so in case you see any priority species in areas where they may not be reported in iMap. There are 4 types of data in the iMap schema. The searched area is the area that you looked for the invasive species. Presence shows where you found an invasive species, and Not Detected shows what you didn't find. A treatment shows what invasives that you controlled, and each of these layers are able to be toggled on and off when viewing data in the browser. All types of records are linked to a searched area record, and a treatment record must overlay a presence record for that species. Now that you have a general understanding of reporting data, we will go more in depth on how to report treatments using iMap Online and Survey123. Recording treatments online or in the browser is good for work back in the office, but can also be accessed through a mobile browser on your phone. The first thing to creating a record is to click on the Create Record button at the top, which will bring up a menu where you can enter treatment details. If presence points already exist, then you can click on Treatment and draw your searched area around the presences. If there are not existing presences, you can create a multi-searched record area to create all types of records at once. After choosing your record type, this menu will pop up and you can enter in any details necessary. And please note that many of the fields are optional, so enter in the data that you would like to track. There are two types of treatment fields: basic and the detailed treatment fields. For basic treatment fields, choose the species that you are targeting and define your searched area by dropping points on the map where you searched around the presence records for the target species. You will be asked to type in basic information like name, date, organization, and projects. Select your type of treatment and you can fill in the details of each box that you would like to track. Review your information, enter anything you need, and you can move on to the detailed treatment fields. These detailed treatment fields are only viewable by others within your organization. This is what the chemical treatment fields will look like, but this will depend on what type of treatment it is, like chemical, physical, or biological controls. All of these fields are optional, but feel free to add in as many details as you would like application method, chemicals used, quantity applied, and more. And I will hand it back over to Mitch so he can tell you more about Survey123.
Thank you, Maddie. So as Maddie said, the online tool is great for reporting treatments, maybe when you get back to the office, or if you happen to be conducting treatments in an area that has really strong connectivity. But if you're conducting treatments somewhere where you might not have service, it's a really good idea to use the iMap Survey123 form, because you can use this regardless of whether or not you have good service. So you can use it out in the field. So once you have an iMap account, what you do to use the iMapInvasives Survey123 is download Esri's Survey123 app from the App Store. So search Survey123 in the App Store or your Google Play Store and download it. And this will bring Esri's app onto your phone. To use Survey123 to report data to iMap, you need to download the iMapInvasives form onto that Survey123 app. So open up the browser on your device and go to the URL listed on the screen. You can also find the URL on our setup guide at NYIMapInvasives.org/training. And so when you go to that URL, it will bring up a page that looks like the screenshot on the right-hand side of the slide. And there will be a big button at the top. It doesn't quite look like a button, but that big gray box that says open in the Survey123 field app, that is what you need to click. The green button below will just download the Survey123 app if you don't have it yet. So that's what you need to do to get Survey123 and then get the iMapInvasives form onto your device. One thing I'll note, or two quick notes on that. So make sure you accept the request for Survey123 to access your camera. And the second note, please note that you can use Survey123 without an ArcGIS account. So just use the sign in, or just use the continue without signing in option rather than inputting your ArcGIS Online credentials. If you do have an ArcGIS Online account, you are welcome to sign in. And so one thing to note about the Survey123 form is that the form exists in a sort of nested box structure. So when you open up the form, there will be gray boxes within them with different groups of questions pertaining to an invasive species observation. So when you open up the form, there will be the general questions, the searched area, and the searched area fields, as well as other boxes. So there's a box for presence records, not detected records, and treatment records. And so the first thing you'll do is create a searched area. And that's the area where you are searching or managing for invasive species. And then within that searched area, you can create presence records. And so that would be a point, line, or polygon where an invasive species was found. And at each of those locations, for instance, at this green polygon, you can tag a species that is present there. And if there are multiple species, you can also add those species into that same presence location. And if there are invasive species at other locations within the searched area, you can add those as well. You can add as many presence locations as well as many species within each of those presence locations as you would like. So you could get pretty complicated, but you can also keep it very simple. So one option that people often use is once you create the searched area, you could just draw that searched area around the infestation, and then you can use that same polygon for your presence and treatment records without having to redraw polygons. All right, so in addition to presence records, you can also list not detected species. So these are species that are not found in the entire searched area. So species that you have looked for but not found. And so you can tag as many species as you are looking for but not finding. Lastly is the treatment records. So for each treatment record, you create a new polygon and it has one target species. So for example, that brown treatment polygon is a treatment that has been applied to the species that is present underneath that polygon. And again, I'll note that in order to create a treatment record, you really need to have an underlying presence record. That's one of the requirements in the database. So we encourage you to create a presence record before you create the treatment. So we always recommend that you create that present record first and then create the treatment record on top of it. And you could include more treatments as well if you conducted multiple treatments within that searched area. And so this is what the survey looks like when you open up your phone. So it's easy to use in the field. You can save and resume at any time, and submitted data are synced to iMap on an hourly basis. So the screenshots show the chemical treatment options. So it's all the same fields that are available in the online form. So for example, if you selected chemical as the treatment type, you would select which chemical application methods you used, which chemicals you used or what were the active ingredients, the concentration of the product, application, quantity used, as much information as you need to input. All of these are optional, but anything that's required to be reported to the DEC at the end of the year, you would want to input that into this record so that it's recorded in the database. And always make sure to press save at the bottom right-hand side. And just to recap, you can collect data out in the field without connectivity, but these records are stored in the outbox, which means they are not in the iMapInvasives platform. So when you get back into the office, it's very important to remember to go to the outbox and click send. And this will sync your records this will bring your records up into the cloud, and then on an hourly basis, they are crosswalked into the iMapInvasives online database. If you have recently sent a record and you want to look at it, but it hasn't ended up in the database yet, you can view your records in the sent folder here. But I should note that this is view only, so you should not be editing any records in the sent folder. The best way to see your records is to log into iMapInvasives and use the filter tool and use the toggle for filtering on your records to see the records you have submitted. One thing to remember is to turn on the treatment layer in layers on off. We encourage you to prepare ahead of time. So practice using the Survey123, submit a few records. So you can create records and select fake species as the species and upload those just to get a feel for the workflow without worrying about actually collecting real data. So we really encourage that. One thing to also consider is that if you have poor service out in the field, the map that you see when you're testing in your office might not load properly. You will still be able to make polygons and use the Survey123 tool, but you would just be looking at a blank map. So if that's what you're doing, we would suggest either walking around the searched area and dropping points as you go. There's an option to just use your geographic location to drop a point. And we would also suggest that you do that for the infestation or the invasive species presences as well as the searched area. But for hand drawing polygons where you think you might need some map imagery on your phone, we encourage using the offline Basemap. So this can be very useful for some of our users, but it's generally not necessary. If you want more information on the offline Basemap, please please email us at iMapInvasives@dec.ny.gov to request a handout on how to access this resource. So this was a brief overview of how to use the Survey123 form. For full instructions, please go to nyiMapInvasives.org/training and open up our iMapInvasives Survey123 setup guide. So now that we've covered 2 ways that you can report treatment data, we're now going to talk about how you can actually view that data and create data summaries. So how can we actually use that data? 2 main tools we'll talk about are the filter tool as well as the report tool, where you can create quick summary reports in minutes. And I'll hand it back over to Madeline.
You can use the filter tool to view different types of data within iMap Online, and you can filter by species, observer, or your records to name some of them. Please note that some types of data are not viewable by basic users, like spotted lanternfly. When using the filter, make sure to turn on or off different types of layers within the geographic layers menu. For example, you would need to turn on the treatment layer if you want to view treatments. The export and report tool allows you to generate different types of summary reports or export groups of data. You can filter by many different parameters with this tool. We encourage you to explore this tool, but there are some very useful filters to note. Filtering by your records will show all of your data in iMap, and you can use the date range to show records only within a specific timeline. You can type species into the species field to only show the species of interest. You can also filter by project, organization, and jurisdiction, which is the state or district that you are creating records in. Please note that in fall 2021, this tool will have more options to filter on. You can create reports in iMap using the report tool located in the action tools. These can be used to view species within a specified area, and you can generate multiple different types of reports, like species list by geography, where you can create a list of species recorded within a selected area. There's infested area that calculates the area covered by a species within the selected area and time frame. Area treated calculates the area treated for species within the area. And approaching region calculates species that are not within the selected area, but are found within a specified buffer distance. And I will hand it back over to Mitch.
So I wanted to go over some of our help resources that might be useful to pesticide applicators. So we have a lot of resources at NYIMapInvasives.org/training. In particular, we have a section on self-guided training, so videos and worksheets that you can use on your own time to train yourself on IMAP invasives. So in particular, some of the helpful resources we have are our help documents, including our Survey123 tutorial document, as well as our self-guided training videos. So on our YouTube channel, we have our recorded webinars, as well as some short tutorial videos to help you train yourself on certain tasks in IMAP invasives. For example, we have a training video on creating records with the online version of IMAP invasives using your browser, as well as creating a record with the mobile app. Those are just some of our several short how-to videos. And you can find all of these at our YouTube channel, which you can also get to from the self-guided training section on our training page, NYIMapInvasives.org/training. And now that we've gone over how to get set up with iMap, how to create records and generate reports, we have a couple of wrap-up messages, including key invasive species to look out for, prisms, and more resources. So one tool I wanted to bring up again was iMpart, which is the iMapInvasives Pesticide Applicator Report tool. So essentially, this is for people who are certified pesticide applicators, since you all need to report your requirements to DEC annually and report your daily use as well. And so essentially how this tool works is if you report your records, your treatment records to iMapInvasives, you can then request a report at the end of the field season by emailing us at imapinvasives@dec.ny.gov with the subject iMpart, and then we will pull all of your data from iMapInvasives, all of the relevant fields you need to report to the DEC, and in the format that you need to report to the DEC. So we will essentially give you a report that you can then review and then submit to the DEC, rather than having to compile the whole report on your own. You can just use the data that's already recorded in our online database. And of course, this applies to treatments of invasive species that you have recorded in iMapInvasives. So this is a really useful tool for our pesticide applicators, and we hope you find use of it. In addition to reporting treatment records, another important role you play for iMapInvasives is that you are out in the field and you are eyes on the ground for the state of New York. So New York State is huge. There's a lot of area to cover and a lot of different invasive species to keep an eye out for. So we really appreciate the efforts of people like you who are out in the field and might notice if a new invasive species has entered an area. So we'll talk a little bit about why that's so crucial.
All the partners in the state want to find things early. The goal is to find infestations when they're still manageable. Water chestnut is one that is very manageable when it's in a small amount. And with your eyes on the ground, we can spot these before they turn into these large infestations that you see on the right. We especially encourage you to submit key reports that could show a jump or an anomaly in a species range. These reports are significant as they help identify outliers, which can influence the decisions of managers and show us where invasive species are spreading to.
And now we'll go over just a couple of species that are high priority in New York State, some of which are early detection species for many regions in New York State. So we encourage you to keep an eye out for these plants, as well as any other invasive species you are familiar with. We'll start with Mile-a-Minute from Madeline.
Mile-a-Minute is one invasive species that you can look for while you're completing treatments. It's an herbaceous vine that has distinct triangular-shaped leaves with saucer-shaped ochrea at each node and barbs along the stem. It has blue fruits and tends to go very quickly over other plants, eventually shading them out. It's very common down in Long Island and lower Hudson Valley area, and the early detection areas is anywhere upstate north of Kingston. And you can see in the distribution map where it's common down in southern New York, but there are some outlier municipalities indicating that there could be mile a minute anywhere in New York.
Another important species to look out for is Hemlock woolly Adelgid, commonly known as HWA. And some background on this species. So hemlock trees are a very important native tree in New York State, very important to our forests as well as to our water resources because they provide shade to streams. And so Hemlock woolly Adelgid is an invasive insect that infests these trees and can kill them after several years. So one of the key ways to identify this species is by the white woolly masses at the base of the needles on the undersides of the branches. And so you can see the many white woolly masses on this branch on the left, and there's a close-up on the right. And so these white masses are the egg masses for these species. On the close-up at the right, you can actually see the adelgids themselves. They're the little black insects that look almost like sesame seeds crawling around the branch. And another important note for identifying this species is that you have to also know how to identify the host plant, so hemlocks. So for anyone who's not familiar, it's a conifer, so you'll see these cones. And another key identifying feature are these white stripes that you can see from the underside of the branch. And so this has been reported in much of the southern part of the state and the southern central part of the state, but it is more of an early detection species in the northern part of the state. So for instance, it has not been found in the majority of the Adirondacks and the majority of northwestern New York. So those are key areas to keep an eye out for Hemlock woolly Adelgid.
Hydrilla is an impactful aquatic invasive that grows along the bottom of water bodies and wetlands in the beginning of the season. And throughout the growing season, it reaches to the top of the surface where it forms dense mats that shade out native species. It has whorls of leaves in 4 to 8 and has toothed leaf margins. And it is important to catch early since this fast-growing invasive can grow up to 1 inch per day and can even clog drainage pipes. Early detection areas are most of New York's water bodies, but are currently found in Cayuga Lake, the Western Erie Canal, and the Long Island Lower Hudson region. Here is a map showing where Hydrilla is found in some of the hydrobasins in New York, and early detection areas would be anywhere outside of these hydrobasins.
Back to the terrestrial world, another very important species to keep an eye out for is spotted lanternfly. So this is an invasive pest from Asia, from Eastern Asia. It was first recorded in Pennsylvania a couple years ago and has since spread across many areas in Pennsylvania as well as New Jersey and has started to enter into New York State. Right now, it is known primarily in the New York State metro area and some of the lower Hudson region. This species is a very big concern because it has many different host plants that it feeds on. So this includes hops, maple trees, grapevines, apple trees, and many other ecologically important native species, as well as agriculturally important species. So there's a huge ecological and economic impact associated with these spotted lanternfly. So one tricky thing about spotted lanternfly is that it has several different life stages that you need to be aware of to be able to identify it. So first there's the egg sacs, which are available pretty much year-round. In the winter and early spring, this is often the best way to identify them because the other stages are not around. So the eggs are covered in a white putty-like substance which ages over time. So you see these egg sacs, which can be relatively white when they're new, but fade to a more brownish gray once they age. In the springtime, nymphs will emerge. So the early nymphs are very small and are black with white spots. They can often be confused with ticks. And these are called instar nymphs. And then before they turn into adults, they turn into a later stage of the instar nymphs where they become red, a little bit larger, and they have white spots. So these are a little bit easier to identify than the smaller black instars that look almost like ticks. And the instar nymphs are around throughout the spring and summer. The showiest stage is the adult stage. So this is the stage that most people are familiar with. And you can see why it's called the spotted lanternflies. You can see these black spots on the wings. When they open their wings, you can see that they are bright red underneath the wings. And they often form these swarms at the bases of tree trunks, which makes them often easier to find than the nymphs, which don't always swarm in that way. And these adults can start to emerge in New York in July, but they become much more common in August and September, and can even linger on later into the fall. And really, most of New York State is considered an early detection area, with the exception of Staten Island and Manhattan. And since spotted lanternfly is such a high priority species with large impacts, we partnered with state agencies, including the Department of Agriculture and Markets, to create a volunteer program where people across the state claim a grid square to survey for spotted lanternfly and its preferred host plant, tree of heaven, which is another invasive species. So we are asking volunteers to claim a location to survey, check it for spotted lanternfly and tree of heaven, and then depending on whether they find it or not, report presence or not detected records. And the goal is that people would be checking their grid squares several times throughout the year and in several locations within the grid square, such that there are about 10 to 20 total records per year. And this would be a combination of presence and not detected records, as well as records of spotted lanternfly and tree of heaven. And we really want to emphasize that early detection is critical for spotted lanternfly and many other species. A special note for spotted lanternfly in particular is that the data is currently hidden within iMap, so you will not see the distribution when you look at the online interface, but you can view the distribution for tree of heaven. And if you want to see the current distribution of spotted lanternfly, you can go to the New York State IPM website, or New York State Integrated Pest Management. And to learn more about this project and to claim a grid square yourself, I encourage you to visit www.nymapinvasives.org/SLF. And I wanted to also point out that there are resources that, in addition to the training resources on our training page, we also have resources for species at NYIMapInvasives.org/resources. And so these include regional species of concern and training on identifying species. And so you can see a screenshot on the right where we in particular highlight spotted lanternfly and Hemlock woolly Adelgid, but we also have links to invasive species profiles from partners across the state, including statewide lists, as well as invasive species identification, as well as invasive species information from the prisms. And below this on our webpage, you can also see some of the species identification guides that we find most useful. And now I'll hand it over to Maddie to talk about another one of our resources, which is the species tiers analysis.
So the framework that we use for classifying invasive species in New York is based on a 4-tier system, and they generally follow the invasion curve. In this tier system, each state and regional species of concern is classified into one of the 4 tiers. This table is accessible online at nynhp.org/invasive/species tiers table. And it's an interactive table where you can find information to make decisions. You can also find how species are classified in your area, as each species can have a different tier depending on what region in New York that it's in. Tier 1 is prevention, which means that the species is not present. And Tier 2 would be eradication, which is a small number and we can still manage it, and eradication is the goal. Tier 3 is containment, where there's an increasing abundance of the species. And then Tier 4 is resource protection and long-term management, where the invasive species is widespread and abundant.
And of course, we want to address as many species as we can in these earlier stages, prevention and eradication, because at this point, control costs are generally smaller and the area infested is not yet large. As we move forward in the invasion curve, invasive species are covering more area and the cost to control them is going to be much larger. So it's very important to consider the lower tier species in any area, the lower tier species in your area, because those are often the most important to report.
The PRISMs are a partnership for regional invasive species management, and we have 8 of them across New York. We encourage you to connect with your PRISM as they coordinate invasive species efforts at the regional level in New York State, including early detection, surveying, management, education, and more. And you can find more about PRISMs at the PRISM directory on our website at NYIMapInvasives.org/about.
So thank you all for joining us for this training. Just to recap, we gave you an overview of what iMapInvasives is, what iMapInvasives can do for you, and why you would consider reporting to this database, how to set up your iMapInvasives account, how to actually collect data and enter it, as well as how to use the online database to view data and generate summary reports. And finally, we discussed the Pesticide Applicator tool, which will be a great help to any certified pesticide applicators, and some wrap-up messages, including how to identify several key high-priority species. And just to sum everything up, iMapInvasives is a great way to report, track, and organize treatment data. It can be a valuable tool for pesticide applicators. Particularly the iMpart tool can help with your annual reporting. And finally, reporting data to iMapInvasives helps PRISMs and agency staff to assess, evaluate, and prioritize their invasive species work. If you have any more questions, you can find more info at our website at nymapinvasives.org, and you can also email us at imapinvasives@dec.ny.gov. And you may also find some helpful resources at nymapinvasives.org/training. Thank you all so much for joining us. And as a reminder, to make sure you get your credits for taking this training, please go to our professionals page at nymapinvasives.org/professionals and take the online quiz for pesticide applicator credit. Thank you all in advance for your contributions to our database. We appreciate all your efforts to control invasive species across the state.